Hi, I'm Jason Willoughby with Reach the City Ministries, and we are on this journey of lament through Lamentations 3, and this is the 5th video clip. Congratulations, you've come a long way just to make it to this place. We're at long last on the upward side of that V-shaped down-up pattern of redemption, and now Jeremiah is going to talk about his recovery of hope and his recovery of his perspective on God and life and everything else. This clip is about the recovery of hope. We're going to look at some very specific truths that when Jeremiah hit bottom and pled for mercy and gave up the fight and bowed down in worship and then had a divine light bulb go on inside of him, the following truths or what God showed him after he forgot in the pit what these things were. So now we're going to have a change of perspective, and a really beautiful thing is going to happen. So stay tuned. We're going to take a deeper dive. Take a longer section of Jeremiah's work in Lamentations 3, 10 verses, verses 22 through 32. I want to read these for you because, again, this is a beautiful, flowing river of redemptive truth that really helped him to make it back up, not as the same man, but in a better place than he went before he entered into the pit. So listen up, receive this, may it encourage you. The Lord's loving kindnesses never cease. His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I have hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the person who seeks him. It is good that he waits silently for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man that he should bear the yoke in his youth. Let him sit alone and be silent, since he has laid it on him. Let him put his mouth in the dust. Perhaps there is hope. Let him give his cheek to the smiter, and let him be filled with reproach. For the Lord will not reject forever. For if he causes grief, then he will have compassion according to his abundant loving kindness. The memory parade begins with 4 powerful truths about how God responds. These 4 things were deeply significant for Jeremiah as the turning point came. The Lord's acts of loving kindness, his gracious, grace-giving actions never stop. That radio station never stops broadcasting. God is emitting constant acts of grace and loyal love towards those who are his. They never stop. Even when Jeremiah was fighting and protesting and complaining, God was broadcasting constantly towards him grace and acts of loyal love. Powerful truth. And it gets better. His compassions never fail. If God is determined to have compassion on you, it's going to happen. His acts of compassion succeed every single time. That's a great comfort to us. His grace never stops broadcasting. His acts of compassion succeed. And unlike bread that gets stale after a day, unlike new things that wear out, these things are new every single morning. There's fresh daily grace and compassion. They never lose their power or potency. They never wear out or grow stale. They're fresh every day. So it just gets better. And all those three beautiful things add up to this: great is his faithfulness. There's a verse in Timothy where Paul says, if we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. God is faithful. He's a promise keeper. He comes through. If he said he's going to do something, he is going to do it. And how great is great? Try infinitely great is his faithfulness. We can't fathom the limit. And you can see we're just expanding the compassion and grace and power of God and his faithfulness. It's growing in our minds. And then there's more. Jeremiah now makes two beautiful, powerful affirmations. The first is, the Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I have hope in him. Suppose I wanted to give you a gift that had infinite value, inexhaustible treasure. It was the gift that literally never stopped giving. It was in amount, in quality, infinite. Would that be enough? Would you say, wow, I've just won the jackpot. I got the greatest prize you could ever conceive. Well, when God says, I'm your portion, you get me. You get all of me. We have just received an infinite portion in the helpings of life. As we're at the banquet of life, you don't get these other things. You get affliction. You don't get some of these goodies. And here's an infinite helping of God himself. You get him. In that perspective, we realize we get it all. And so therefore Jeremiah said, this life, happiness, comfort, beautiful things happening for my people, they're not going to happen. But in the end, I get all of him. Him. He's my portion. He's my slice of apple pie in the helpings of life. The infinite, sweet, goodness. And then he affirms that it's worth it to wait on God. The Lord is good to those who wait on him, who seek him. Instead of giving up, we want to go all the way to the end and have the prize. We want to emerge like Job did after losing everything and arguing with God for 25 chapters and his three friends. In the end, he got God himself, and it was worth going through everything to have that intimacy and relationship with God that working the religious formula could never give him. Same thing here. It is good that he waits silently. Put aside the protests, put aside the arguments, just quietly park there in that bottom place of surrender and worship. Wait for him. Let God be God. Let him be God in his own timing, his own way. Trust him to give you himself and give you what's best with eternity in view, with what things you can't see, can't understand in mind. In the end, redemptive intervention of God is worth waiting for. And it is good that we learn this. As Jeremiah says, it's good that we would wait, that we would learn, we would bear the yoke in our youth. Boy, if we can learn this young, this pattern of down up, this waiting on the Lord, this redemptive intervention on the other side of going all the way down and hitting bottom and surrendering and submitting and dying to self and just throwing it out there for his compassion and then inheriting him and all that he wants to do and be and give us. Folks, if we could just learn this when we were young, what a powerful life we would have. And so that's why Jeremiah not only affirms that God is his portion, but he affirms God is well worth waiting for. Verses 28 through 30, there Jeremiah now shares three permissions. Let him, the afflicted person, sit alone and be silent, since he has laid it on him. Let him put his mouth in the dust. Perhaps there is hope. Let him give his cheek to the smiter. Let him be filled with reproach. Trust God. Let him take you all the way down if he must. Submit and surrender to what he's bringing into your life. Yield instead of trying to control, complaining, agitating, arguing. fighting a futile battle we can't win. Instead, let this person in that place just surrender. And again, it's a permission. You have the choice, you have the permission, instead of that futile, frustrating, darkening fight, to hit that bottom and worship and just let God do what God wants to do. You can't control it anyway. You can either hate it or you can have a hopeful waiting and a submission to what you can't control and fix and prevent anyway. You can either hate the process or have a serenity in the process and trust the bigger plan. Jeremiah ends this section in verses 31 and 32 with this beautiful and heartwarming and sustaining truth. The Lord will not reject. He will not turn us over to adversity, affliction forever. It's time limited. And that's why Peter in 1 Peter 1 says, now for a little while you have been distressed by various trials. God sets the time limit. It's not infinite. There's a limitation there in time. It won't be forever. This gives us another anchor of hope. Seasons pass. Times of affliction, times of trying come and then they go. And here's the really beautiful thing. For if he causes grief, if God permits, if he signs off on any grief, any affliction in your life, here's the exciting thing. Then, if you get that, you're going to also get his compassion. So time-limited grief in exchange for infinite compassion. How much compassion? According to his abundant, loyal love, his abundant grace. It's just beyond our fathoming. We literally hit the jackpot of compassion and mercy and grace. So with grief comes the redemptive counterweight that's infinitely greater and bigger of God's loyal love and grace. That's how much our compassion weighs, balancing out that pain and that affliction. So these are all truths that Jeremiah rehearses to get in touch with that redemptive plan, that down-up reality that God brought into his life in affliction, and now in this turning point, this is what he saw, and it lifted him up. A lot of ground in this particular 10-verse section of Lamentations 3. There is a lot to unpack. We're just skimming the surface, folks. But let me just tell you that when you finally can see the things you've forgotten and you get back in touch with deep, spiritual, abiding, unchanging truth that fortifies, encourages, refreshes, and puts you in touch with the compassion, the mercy, the faithfulness, the goodness of God for you personally that never fails, never ceases. And if you get the grief, you get the jackpot of God's mercy and grace to counterweight that. And having that perspective is a huge recovery. There's another recovery coming next, and that's how we see God. So in the 6th video, we're going to take a look at our actual picture of God we have here and here, and Jeremiah is going to complete this redemptive bounce back with a refreshed view of who God really is.